HFS for sustainability, and that essentially means an eclectic mix of research, strategy work, partnership building, advocacy. And I have the privilege of being able to facilitate the discussion with this incredible panel, 4 people in person, 2 online, where we're essentially going to touch on innovation broadly, but innovation on how we make our current agriculture system better, how we create the future agriculture system, as well as the sort of virtues of business and government collaboration, again, in the spirit of COP. And the only thought that I wanted to contribute before saying as little as possible was when I first spoke to Marta from Kernel about the work that you were doing a couple of years ago, it sort of struck me as a fantastic story of a company being able to integrate and embed sustainability throughout an organization and an ecosystem despite the ongoing invasion. But I think after sort of going around the Ukraine pavilion today, I would highly encourage anyone to take a look at some of the statistics and some of the examples of genuine success in the hardest possible circumstances, is that it's not about doing sustainability despite the invasion, but actually because it is an incredibly positive thing to do in the here and the now, but also for the future. And I think we can all take that forward as a fantastic story and example to basically say to anybody else, there's really no excuse for not finding your own sphere of influence. Right. So before going first to our 2 online speakers, I'm going to give everyone in the room a minute to kind of introduce themselves and say what's top of mind so that you're not sat here for 25 minutes cold. And we'll start with Sylvie.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with all of you this morning. No, it's the afternoon already. Here on COP, in the Ukraine pavilion. I'm Sylvie Wabs. I'm an agronomist and I work in the Emergencies and Resilience Office in FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Dan. I'm a data science team lead in Kernel, and we are doing some data science solutions for precision agriculture. But frankly speaking, I believe that they are strongly correlate with lower carbon footprint, because we know when to do some fertilizers and when to put it and at exact dates. And also trying to solve logistic task, because it's also reduce the number of transportations. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I am Katerina Shavanova. I am PhD in genetics, and also I am R&D team lead in Kernel. And I am science support of our agricultural team, and it's, I am widely browsing new technologies and looking for something new, and some partners here is from my browsing system. And I believe we need a lot of network here, not only online, but offline, to continue our collaboration for low carbon input and other things.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Regina Urazmanova. I'm product manager of EOSDA Analytics. We usually model what's going on in environments. If you're talking about agriculture, we have farmers to save money of soil sampling, and that's how they can increase their potential of regenerative agriculture. Also, we have some project in forest monitoring, because we usually analyze satellite data and we use it for deforestation and monitoring the activities and going on in the field, like tillage detection, cover crop detection, and others. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Can we now turn to, I think, Elena first, and then we'll head to Inbal afterwards. I think, Elena, you're here. I can see you.
Yeah, I'm
now
here.
You're on the screen. Hey,
okay.
Over to you.
And
Me? For people in the room, you might need to try the headphones to hear our online speakers, just as a warning. Elena.
Okay, thank you so much. It is a great privilege to join you even online. So I'm Elena Peronyuk. I'm working in the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine, and I'm the coordinator of the prioritization in the Mine Action. So what we essentially do is we are checking the status of the territory that were affected by war in Ukraine. And we are classifying those territories into those that can be returned back to the economy and those that are unfortunately cannot. And as for now, we see quite a huge amount of territories that are really damaged. And we hope that using the territories for carbon neutral or even carbon capturing agricultural industry can be a huge benefit for Ukraine and also for Europe.
Oh, hey, Elena, I think you're good to give your kind of main contribution if you would like. I think we'll get through you and Inbal for the next maybe 15 to 20 minutes and then bring the conversation back to the room because I think you might need to potentially leave us before the end.
Yes, maybe we can listen to Inbal introducing herself and then I will proceed.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm sorry I'm not able to be there in person. My name is Inbal Bekareshev. I'm the director of NASA Harvest. This is NASA's international program on food security and agriculture, where our prime mission is really to look at how do we integrate more satellite information and data into the hands of end users, whether those are private sector, governments, humanitarian organizations, across the board from sustainability to food security, to early warning, and as you'll see in my presentation, also in terms of actually estimating agricultural production under war conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will proceed to my main contribution. So basically, to start with, I need to say that Ukraine currently is the most mined country in Europe. Officially, we recognize that there were more than 173,000 square kilometers that were potentially mined, and also there might be even much more territories that were affected by war. The main problem with these territories is basically that they might have some increased amount of traces of the explosive ordnance. They might need some increased amount of the heavy metals, yet in accordance with our analysis, they are not higher than the standards, I would say, for the agricultural products. And also the great issue and problem that we face is a bomb turbation of the territory. So basically, when the explosive ordnance is exploding, it is burning the organic layer of the soil as well as it is erupting all of the other soil around it. Hence, it leads us to the territory, to the agricultural land losing its fertility, and that is a great issue for us. So, of course, there are some territories that are slightly affected by war. It means that they contain a tiny bit of, traces of the explosive ordnance and so on. So this situation can be addressed using agricultural approaches and also using remediation. And we could return this territory back to the economy. Yet there will be quite a huge part of the territory of Ukraine that will be damaged quite severely. And in the rough calculations, we can say that it is about 30,000 square kilometers that might be not available for providing agriculture anymore, because it is essentially the territory of current frontline. And it is contaminated with everything, basically, with the leftovers of the explosive ordnance, with some substances that were used by Russia against the international law, and so on and so forth. And also those territories might be dangerous for living because they are extremely difficult to demine and to return back to the agricultural use. So our goal, considering those territories, is to develop criteria in accordance with which we can classify the territories onto the territories that are okay for providing, for growing biofuel plants, and those that we want to use for for sequestering the carbon and sequestering the greenhouses, because we are hoping to provide the territory for forestry, for growing meadows, and so on and so forth. So my main message here in this panel is to say that to create the model of doing something with that huge territory is impossible by only the means of government, or only the means of landowners, or only the means of agri-holdings. It should be a huge collaboration between the government, businesses, international partners, of course, to actually return back that territory into the economy and into the good using, and then also benefiting from that territory to decrease the climate risks and to increase the carbon sequestration potential of Ukraine and the whole Europe. And that is it for me. I would be grateful for the questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Elena. I was just going to ask, I don't know if there are any questions before Elena leaves in the room, but I was just going to ask you about financing demining, and currently kind of where are your major sources of funding right now, and where do you see that they need to go in the future? Because I would imagine the answer is you need a lot more finance to demine Ukraine now and in the future. But yeah, where is it coming from? Where does it need to come from in the future?
Thank you for the question. We have a very diverse funding because the territory is huge. Of course, we have a great support from the international partners, and they are supporting essentially the humanitarian demining. There are a couple of international demining operators that are working in Ukraine. Currently in Ukraine, we have 83 certified demining operators that are certified for humanitarian demining. Humanitarian demining is demining the territory that is not the front line and not near the border of Ukraine. So talking back about the funding, it is international operators who are funded by themselves and by the international organizations. We have donors that include the governments of the partnering countries, and that also includes private donor organizations such as Mr. Howard Buffett Foundation, who is a great friend of Ukraine and of the demining. And of course, we are trying to put it not only to put it on the donors' shoulders, but also funded by ourselves. So we have the operative demining, which is conducted by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and they're, of course, funded by themselves, basically. And we are also opening the tenders, the auctions for demining. For example, if the farmer would like to have his territory demined, he can announce that he wants this territory demined, and then the private operators will come to the market and try to take part into the contest and demine this territory. So partly the price of the demining will be refunded by the Ukrainian government. Partly it is funded by the farmer himself. So to sum up, I need to say that funding the demining is a huge boiling pot of essentially everything, because we consider demining as a phase 0 of reconstruction of Ukraine, because you cannot create anything on the mined territory. So for the Ukrainian government, demining is one of key priorities, I would say, in returning back Ukraine to peaceful times and economy use. Of course, number one priority lies in hands of our armed forces, yet as a civilians, we also need to do a lot to be able to use the territories that we have left, and then the territories that we will be regaining after the victory of Ukraine.
Thank you again, Elena. Hope to speak to you soon about some of these, but have a terrific rest of the day if you at some point need to leave us. Yeah, thanks again. But can I turn to Inbal now to talk about your work at NASA Harvard?
Yes, great. I've prepared a few slides. I'll share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, all clear. Thank you.
Great. Good. So I have already introduced myself and briefly NASA Harvest. I'll just add that it's a large consortium of partners and organizations from across the agricultural sector, government, space agencies, research. Kernel, of course, is a partner for us as well, and many organizations, in fact, in Ukraine. And so I'll just very briefly start by saying food insecurity is probably one of the biggest challenges that we face in this century, and in particular under a warming climate. I've put some of the most recent statistics from the SOFI report from FAO on here. 733 people face severe food insecurity at the moment. And we know we need to grow production significantly by 2050, but of course we don't have any more amounts of land that we can be cultivating on. And so thereby we need to be able to increase production sustainably, and innovation is going to be critical for that. And I would also add that COVID and then the full-scale invasion of Ukraine has brought food security back to the forefront of many governments and organizations' attention. And so why satellite data? We have lots of satellites going around the Earth all the time, collecting a lot of information, both in various wavelengths, that are really critical for us for solving a lot of the world's problems and for being able to monitor and document and understand how things are changing. And one of those that it has a significant application for is agriculture and food security, of course, climate change as well, biodiversity. And what I'd like to share with you here today is specifically some of the work we've been doing in Ukraine, primarily with FAO, with the Ministry of Agriculture, and as well with the State Statistical Service. And this is part of a broader scheme on our side for being able to do rapid agricultural assessments in support of policy, where satellite data really becomes the only means for us to be able to monitor. And so when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started, we've been working with the Ministry of Agriculture to be able to use satellite data to monitor not only what crop production is in the government-controlled territories where data can be collected, right, but really be able to monitor what's happening in the occupied territories. And so one of the first things we did was first to look at how much of Ukraine's agricultural land was under Russian occupation and how has that changed. And so at the moment, it's around 20%. At the beginning of the war, it was 23% before some of the areas were liberated. But the implications of this have actually been, because it's not possible to be on the ground, has been that this leaves a massive gap in agricultural statistics of what Ukraine's actual crop production is. And I'll show some of these. And so we talked about, first of all, we heard from Elena about the abandoned land due to, of course, the front line and the unexploded ordnance and mining. And so here we're able to monitor it. And so what I'd like to draw your attention to is this area, I don't know if you can see my mouse, around the front line, and you see it this very green area. And what that is Ukraine's soil is some of the most fertile soil in the world. And so if it's abandoned, it's not going to lay bare. But actually what we see it is greening up when the winter crops green up, but staying green throughout the whole season. And we can map that. And so this is our map of essentially abandoned land. And you can see the front line. You can see the areas that have been liberated. And you can see here, this is not our map, but a line of the Russian fortifications. And you see that follows it very closely. And what we've done is we've estimated this is approximately 7.5% of Ukraine's cropland that's been abandoned, roughly equivalent just for 2023 alone, when we estimated what production would have been worth upwards of $2 billion, okay? Now, what we can do and what we've been doing is monitoring. We can map the different croplands across Ukraine. We can use these to do area estimates, and we can do yield estimates ultimately to get at production. But what we can do is we can do this for the government-controlled territories separately from the occupied territories. And so we've now done this for 3 years. And Danilo's there, and he's contributed to this effort, but working very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and with FAO. And you can see here what our total estimates are for production for these crops. So as most expected was that Ukraine was going to have a massive reduction in production. But despite the war, what we found is that, yes, there has absolutely been a reduction in production, but a significant proportion of its production is being harvested in occupied territories. So the losses are not nearly as big as what one would understand from looking at international statistics of production for Ukraine. And so the way we can validate that what we're doing makes sense, because again, we don't have ground data, especially for occupied territories, is here's a comparison between the State Statistical Service of Ukraine numbers and the satellite-driven estimates. And here on the big graph, I'm showing production for the last 3 years for government-controlled territories. And you can see this also broken by yield and by harvested area. And what you can see is that we're very close. And that gives us the confidence in these methods to apply them to the occupied territories. And so what we find when we do that is that about 23.6 million tons of grains and oilseeds have been harvested in occupied territories. Okay, this is a massive amount of grain and oilseeds. The largest proportion of that, 16.6 million tons, is wheat. And if to put that into context of how much are we talking about, if we put this in the context of Russia's exports, for example, that's equivalent to 10.5% of what Russia has exported since 2022. Russia, remember, being the biggest exporter in the world. It's about 2.5% of global wheat traded and about almost 27% of US wheat exports, okay, so for a year. So this is not a negligible amount of grain, yet it's not showing up in official global statistics. And so if you look at what Ukraine's production is, according to global statistics, it's this, this is before the war, and this blue line here is what it looks like in statistics. And therefore, the main storyline has been Ukraine has lost a tremendous amount of production. Russia happens to have had bumper crops and significantly increased its production. Yet what we see from the satellite data, on average, if you account for Ukraine's total territory, on average, there's been a decline of around 4 or 5%, and not the 20% if you look at official statistics. And there's been a large focus on reporting on this and from being able to show what the impact of the war has been. And here I've just put an article that came out in Science last week talking about it. The problem with focusing on that is that it's masking the massive amount of grain that is essentially being seized on the occupied territories. And so a lot of people assume that there is no production because of the war. And in fact, there is, but it's now no longer benefiting Ukraine. And so this has been really important and really the only way to be able to account for and show and potentially start to quantify how much grain is being seized and potentially being illicitly traded. And so here are some of the different articles that have been coming out on this work. I think primarily our biggest concern is that it is serving the government of Ukraine as being helpful. And actually, it's very much a collaborative work. So this is joint work that we're doing. But in bringing it back to kind of talking also about where we started, satellite data. And so here are some of the different kinds of agricultural products, right? These foundational agricultural products one can produce with satellite data. And it's about crop type, it's about crop management systems, it's about productivity. And these are not only important for what I just showed in terms of estimating, for example, production or losses, these are also really important for being able to advance sustainable transition. And I know there's a lot of work ongoing in this space in Ukraine by various organizations, including on Kernel, and can help to provide really a lot of the critical information about how do we better manage this kind of transition? How do we understand which practices work best where? How do we integrate different crop rotations? How do we look at cover cropping? How long does it take to be doing cover cropping before you build up resilience, right? All these kinds of questions are really important, and satellite data can play and is starting to play a really major role in this. And I think we're seeing a lot of innovation, a lot of resilience, technology, data science coming in across various organizations and agribusinesses in Ukraine, which I think has already been alluded to, has been tremendously impressive, including due to the significant challenges that are already being posed by the war. And ultimately, these are going to position Ukraine as a pivotal player, given its important role in agricultural production globally, in the shift towards sustainable and resilient food systems. So I'd like to just acknowledge the massive team that has been doing this work, our partners, both in Ukraine and in other organizations, and our various collaborators. And thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Inbal. We will definitely come back to you with some questions, hopefully from the room or from the panel in a little bit. But let's turn to the in-person delegation. I might start with Regina at the end and work our way back to myself to just continue the conversation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm glad we already touched satellite data analytics and how crucial and important now in Ukraine. Yeah, and I'm also glad that we touch the point of collaboration, because also I think it's one of the important, because we are company, we are business, but for us it's really important to communicate with government and communicate with other businesses. For example, with Kernel, they have huge amount of data. We are data analytics company, and for us the ground truth data is really crucial because we can see from satellite, but we need to calibrate these models and validate them in real life. So yeah, my point is that I agree totally that collaboration is a key, and I'm glad that we touched this point. I hope we will touch it more with ministries of Ukraine. And about satellite data, also we mentioned that how our soil is destroyed right now and how it will be destroyed in years. But the thing about satellite data is that we can see what's going on the land, because we can't go there. It's really dangerous go to the front line. But we can, and it would be impossible to have their crop, real agriculture crops there. But we can start with biofuels, for example, or other crops that we can use. So we can use this land for Ukrainian economy, but in another way. Yeah, and the satellite data is one of the, I don't know, key data here, because we really can't go and see, we can't go and take soil samples. We can see from the satellite and analyze. And here, if we're talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence, we also have huge team with work with this. We have huge amount of data if we're talking about open resources like weather data and some statistics. Yeah. So modeling here is also the key, because modeling and artificial intelligence helps us to save costs on this process. For example, if we're talking about soil organic carbon modeling, where we need to take soil samples, we need to take it a lot. But with modeling, we can save on it. And it's one of the goal of our company, helps farmers who already loses a lot of money because Russia invades Ukraine. We can help them to save something by modeling. We can model soil organic carbon, what's going on their fields. We can help them to understand which crop rotation you should do. We can forecast how climate will change in a year and how much irrigation you need to put, or maybe you need to change your crop. It will be more efficient. And here I really like machine learning and artificial intelligence, because it's helped us and farmers in Ukraine. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I want to continue the topic about collaboration and science and the sharing of knowledge. Because, now in Ukraine, we're in that situation, we have some expertise and knowledge, actually, we didn't want them, about how innovations in agriculture can still be available in the wartime. Yeah, and now we have this strange war-life balance, as we mentioned. And yesterday it was in Ukraine, it was a day of agricultural worker, actually. It's like our big celebration. And yesterday it was a big, large-scale attack all Ukraine. Yeah, missile attack. It was huge amount of missile, more than 200. And on the Monday, people still go into the work, to the field, and continue doing their innovation. And my thought is we should share our knowledge not only in Ukraine, like from big business to the small businesses, when we talk about a lot of collaboration with officials, with NGO, with business, but actually we have a lot to share to abroad, for international community, because we appreciate a lot for international support, because we can't exist now without international support. But we now has our unique expertise in different area, and we are ready to share, because we don't know in 5 years where is a big war coming. And people still need food, and people still need agriculture, even in that wartime. And maybe later I back and explain you what does it mean near me. And now Dan, he's our data analyst chief, and he explain more details why we are so cool in that area.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I want to share a few examples of what we're doing. I think like our logistic model is the most relevant to this topic because, for example, last year we ran our logistic model for like strategic level. So it was run once by one week or 2 weeks, and it gives business just general understanding how to move our harvest. And so this model take into account thousands of fields, tens of elevators and plants, because we need to transport it and save somebody somewhere. And afterwards, we have to move to several ports. So this model takes into account all of this and hundreds of thousands conditions that made for trams, for lorries, for elevators lines, and so on. So now in this year, we launched this model for day-by-day regime, and our operators run it several times a day. And the optimal way of transporting all our harvest could take from minutes to hours. And it depends on what conditions they would like to add to the model. So, and definitely, so we're saving carbon footprint by just reducing the number of transportation and do it in the optimal way. For example, another model that we also launched this year, it's BBCH forecast. So it means, so for example, corn has from 0 to 100 BBCH index. It means each index is a different stage of growth. And we definitely want to know at what phase our fields are today, because knowing this, we know when we can use these fertilizers or another nutrition, and we don't waste our chemicals and put it exactly in the correct day, week. And it also, like, I can't say it's saving, but it's helping us to use it in more proficient way. So also, and I hope all these models like BBC forecast, it gives us understanding when we'll get our grain ready to harvest. So a result of these models combining with crop yield forecast, combining all these models will go to the logistic models, and we want to make like chain of models that help each other to take into account of previous model. And for example, here on that stand, if you have time, you can check how our model of counting number of seeds in corn. So our agronomists before, our agronomists have to go and manually count each seed on sunflower, for example. So now we developed computer vision model that do it offline when it in the field without internet connection, and do it in the standard way, in optimal way, and save the time of our agronomists, and they can spend their time on more interesting job. So yeah, we do a lot of things that will, in future, we'll calculate how much we save carbon footprint, but it will be in the future. And now we're testing, evolving, and we like what we're doing. Thank you.
Very nice ending. You like what you're doing. It's great, impressive. I'm the last speaker? Yes. I'm with FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and FAO has a double mandate, a humanitarian mandate and a development mandate. And in Ukraine, we are coming in with a humanitarian mandate, especially to help on the demining operation, bringing in the technical skills and the expertise, especially on the soil aspects, but also contributing to strategies on the recovery of the agri-food system that's been impacted and is being impacted by the war. This is important to have the linkages between the emergency and the recovery and the development. And we work in our office, especially on a multi-hazard risk and impact management approach. And here we really, and I'm happy to hear this from the introduction and from the panelists on looking at the combination of the war and the climate change, because these are two threats and impacting both the agri-food system in Ukraine and in many other countries in the world. So it's very important to have this multi-hazard risk and impact management approach to move forward and build, the resilience and sustaining peace. So the agri-food system approach is really involving all actors, from production to consumption along this food value chain. But here in Ukraine, what we've been especially collaborating on from the beginning of the crisis, but now it evolved with the FAO WFP collaboration since 2023 on the urgent demining efforts, as we've heard before, and to try to focus the efforts because it's expensive and we cannot tackle all the areas at one go. The idea is to focus and use the data and information on the arable land of Ukraine and to focus on demining first the most productive area, because that is orientating the strategic priorities of these costs and these investments and to prompt the return to production. So as we've heard, explosive and minings having not only a hazard and affect the life of the farmers, but are extremely damaging for the soil, with contamination that is at times reversible, at times non-reversible. So it is very important not only to analyze that which one are these most fertile and productive soil to give priority first, but it's important to assess the degree of contamination of the soil. And FAO has been providing, together with WFP, on this mine action program, testing and establishing the methodology for the soil contamination assessment. And it's acting in that way and a scientifically neutral partner for doing this assessment of the war-related chemical contamination and support of the Ministry of the Economy, which is the lead Ukraine authority for humanitarian demining. FAO, it's training experts in the relevant institution from Ukraine on the soil damage analysis. And this is being done in the training center of the specialized laboratory of the Ministry of Defense of Belgium. I'm a Belgian agronomist, so I have to say it. In addition, FAO is coordinating the soil analysis initiative, helping the institution and the Ukrainian authorities to coordinate the information of the soil contamination information and analysis with the action operators, because the interplay of the data and the validity of this data is important, that the data is prioritized and shared so it can inform all the various operational chain. So this is really the work that that is taking us, all this sort of technical support at the soil level. I know that there's been also collaboration on the water issue, on the climate, low carbon production, the resilience, other type of risk management, disaster, climate-related disaster risk, drought, flood, and so on is also very important. But at the moment, this is the big focus and the spotlight on this humanitarian role, which is important in the current conflict situation, but very important to kickstart the recovery of those most productive land as an ongoing effort. I think I would like to end here, and I want to thank you very much for having us on the panel.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Before turning to the room for any questions, just talk about collaboration. It came up a lot, and I think every innovation initiative in history has probably lived or fallen apart based on collaboration, and specifically collaborating towards a kind of shared goal, an outcome, a mission, call it what you will. And I want to turn to Inbal if you're still able to hear us, and then go along the panel with just a quick, maybe 1 minute call to action to your entire systems. Like, who do you want to collaborate with more that is not currently around the table in the way they should be? Who do you want to bring in to the, I was going to use the phrase moonshot for a second, because that's almost become synonymous sometimes with these mission-driven partnerships or programs. But yeah, 1 minute call to action. Who do you want to collaborate with more? Inbal.
Great, thanks. That's a great question. I mean, I think it's with the private sector, and it's the private sector, and there it's a lot of different, right? It's those that have a lot of being able to better develop models, whether we're talking about sustainability and understanding better how do you give advice and understand which practices you should be encouraging where, or how do you provide financing for that or insurance for that matter, and understand the risk. A lot of that depends on having very good ground data. And that data exists, but it exists oftentimes on the private sector side. On the research side, I think there's a lot more we could do together from the policy, research, and private sector continuum, if you will. I think if we develop more trusted relationships, if we understand better how to develop mutually beneficial kinds of propositions for each other, and very clearly from the beginning state what is in it for each group and how do we work together and how do we build that trust, I think we'll move forward much, much faster. And I'm happy to say that in Ukraine, we've been able to do that, in my perspective. One of the best examples of this at least from where we sit in terms of the agricultural research side of things, is being able to really integrate the knowledge that's on the ground with the satellite data, improve models, and then share that back and do that together, and being able to really demonstrate the benefits of that.
Perfect. Let's keep going along the line in the room. I think we've still got time.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with Inbal, as we have also different models, especially in satellite data. It's really important for us to collaborate with private sector, because they have a lot of ground truth data that help calibrate and validate our modeling. But also I would like to highlight the important collaboration between ministries and businesses, because I don't have like great example in agriculture, but if you're talking about forest monitoring and deforestation, I mean, we need 1 week with my team to detect deforestation in the forest, but we can just provide the data. It's important that ministry or like organization who are responsible for the actions will use this data and do actions. I think if we're talking about climate change mitigation and adaptation, it's we have, like, all of us have one goal, and it's important that we provide data, we provide solution, we can make the work faster for everyone, but businesses and government need to take this data and act. So I think it's important to collaborate in this sector. And also, if we're talking about machine learning data, it's always about data. And yeah, in one goal, we need to get this data. Thank you.
Thanks. I try to use like different point of view. In innovation, we always need a lot of creativity, you know, and our stakeholders, it's not only scientists or private business or officials or governments. It's also all small farmers, you know, in Ukraine and abroad, actually, because they should understand what we are doing and why we are doing that. And I want to show you closer. It's named like Minefield Honey. It's our project, Kernel project, about how to use the land, like mined territory, not very productive, as you mentioned, yeah, because like first stage, it's very productive, we should demine them. But we have different type of soil in Ukraine, and some of them are pollinated too much, and we try to use them made honey, you know, and it's a nice symbol of renewal, and it's possible for small farmers use it, and we're very proud of that. Actually, we are talking a lot about we should add innovation for every step on the path of the grain. You know, like path of the grain, it started from seedlings and then continued to the logistic and to the other C's. And we add innovation actually in every small step. Now we add innovation like in wartime, it's specific ones, yeah. But we have that expertise, and now we are talking more. We are ready to share. It's what we, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think everybody talks about the data, and I would, propose or summarize like it would be nice to make some data space where everybody could share at least some part of their data and make it publicly available, so everybody can have access to this and do whatever they want. And so it's first step, and another step is to collaborate. So just to extend solutions, services, test them, validate them, and talk about what exactly do we need. So time to time I have like problem with problem definition. So it's better also to just to say, okay, we need to make this target and we have such milestones. And if it's more clear and understandable, it's easier for us, for technicians, to reach these goals. And yeah, such kind of public meetings also would benefit, just to understand who are working in the same task, just to understand who can help each other. So yeah.
Thank you. And I'm a small-scale farmer myself and try to walk the talk. And when I hear the cost behind demining and giving priority to first productive land, I think it would be also nice to have a partnership to help maybe some of the other smallholders in Ukraine that maybe are on a less productive land, maybe a little more marginal land. I don't know enough the geography and the territory, but very much in line with what you were saying. And to still find some sponsoring for demining of those areas. And in line with the climate priorities, climate mitigation and adaptation, to find in the recovery process and define together in a sort of multi, private, public, small, big sort of a task force to explore these different alternatives to this land recovery. What are the different options, the steps, as you were saying, biofuel, or maybe forest there, or that type of culture that decontaminates, what is there for the next step? But to articulate that is beneficial, yes, for large producers, but also for smaller actors, not only for the most productive land, but also with this climate lens that all land matter, both from the soil and the carbon sequestration function. Maybe I will end it here. Thank you very much.
Hey, I don't see anyone rushing to push us off stage, so we might be able to fit in some audience questions if there are any. And if not, we'll continue the conversation away from the panel. Can I buy some of the minefield honey? Am I allowed to take it back? Does it clear customs? Don't know, I think. Okay, okay, thank you. Let's talk. Thank you once again to the incredible panel, to Elena, who's had to leave us, to Inbal, who hear your applause, if the microphone's still working. I think it is, but yeah, thank you again.